Hey, let's get away to a beautiful location for a destination retreat that will transform your relationship. This opportunity is unlike anything you've done before. 2 days with Brad will give your relationship the boost it needs. Then enjoy the beautiful scenery. Go to healingbrokentrust.com for more information. Do it soon because time is limited.
How do I know you're not going to do the same to me? You grew up with them. You created this life with them. They have this, this level of significance and attachment meaning to you. I don't have any of that with you. Granted, you feel like I'm your soulmate, but how do I know the tables aren't going to turn on me once you start feeling that way?
Hey guys, welcome to the show. I'm Morgan Robinson here with Brad, my handsome husband.
Heidi-ho, everybody.
Hello. And before we get started, we want to say we have some amazing destination retreats available. Actually, we have filled our calendar in June and July for destination retreats. So we don't have anything available for June or July, but we do have a destination retreat available for August 30th and 31st. That's a Wednesday and Thursday. So if you want to get away from your problems where they are, no matter where you are, and come to a beautiful sunny destination to really get a new lease on life.
To maybe Cancun or Florida.
Yeah. Then you can book a destination retreat over the phone. You can give us a call at 918-281-6060 and book that destination retreat today while it still is available. And you can check us out on the web at healingbrokentrust.com. We hope to see you soon. There are some destination retreats available further out, but also we have retreats available in our Tulsa office. So you can come to Tulsa and do a retreat in the office. We just don't have any getaway retreats in June and July available at this point in time. Let's go ahead and get started. We've had several people over the years, and we have lots of people who call us and talk with us and say, my spouse has left for the other person, or they want to leave. And we sometimes hear from that spouse who says, I want to leave. I'm thinking about leaving for the affair partner. And they say, well, I don't know if counseling will work, or, they might be afraid that they won't ever be happy in their marriage or in their present relationship as they are or would be in the affair. So today we're going to talk about that. Why not just leave for the affair partner? So, Brad, do you want to talk a little bit about what the research says?
Sure. Yeah, sure. We can talk about the research, Morgan. Talk about my experience in working with couples on this issue.
Absolutely.
And Morgan, let me just briefly say this. This is a hard topic for me to talk about because, I always try to be fair to everybody.
Right.
And this one, it's hard to talk about because, the reality of the situation is pretty bleak. The statistics are really stacked against people who go and try to be with the affair partner. I just don't want anybody to think I'm being unfair by describing my experience of working with couples with this and by delivering the statistics. But this is something that, we encounter a lot and have helped people work through. Right. Our listeners, they only know us through this podcast. And so we're really trying to be fair. And part of that fairness is, kind of accurately reporting what we experience in this and what the research shows.
Right.
And so why not leave? Why stay, basically? And I think, like you said, there's research on this. One of the pieces of research shows that only a small number of people who left their spouse to go marry their affair partner are still married. Right. There's only a small number of people that are still married after 5 years who started their marriage as an affair.
Right.
Who 5 years later are still married.
And I was really surprised to hear that actually a small percentage leave. So as someone who's experienced betrayal, I think many believe that the betrayer will just leave for the affair partner. But you're saying that it's actually a small percentage that actually leave. Why is that?
Why is it a small percentage that actually leave and not like a larger percentage?
Yeah, like everybody.
First of all, a lot of people know that an affair is impractical. They aren't really in love with the affair partner. Maybe there's certain things that they enjoy from the affair, but they're not truly in love with the affair partner. Not everybody feels like they're married to the wrong person and that the affair partner is their soulmate. The people who tend to think that the affair partner is their soulmate and who get really stuck in that limerence, they're the ones who are going to kind of be thinking about leaving to go be with the affair partner. So not every affair is that way. So not everybody who has an affair is just automatically thinking, hey, I want to go be with this person. Some people know that they can see the reality of the situation and say, this isn't going to be pretty. They're able to see the pain of what the separation will bring from their spouse. They're able to see, and honestly, they're even able to see the pain of what it will be like to be with the affair partner. And the biggest reason why people don't leave, they also know the significance that their spouse has and that their family has in their lives. A lot of people see their spouse as somebody they had children with, that they became an adult with, that they grew up with.
They have history with.
They have history with them.
Yeah.
Their spouse is a good person. But there's also this inherent distrust towards somebody that they've had an affair with. So most people don't leave because the affair partner is not really what they want, so they don't leave. But the people who do leave tend to be people that have gotten caught in limerence, which is something that we've talked about in a previous episode for you guys to listen to. It's one of the very first ones. We talk about limerence and how to fall out of love.
Yeah, I think another way we term it is love sickness and that sort of thing. So, and that leads me to this another question. There's two basic trust issues. If they don't have one, then they have the other, and sometimes they have both. So you want to talk about what those are?
Yeah, the two trust issues that people have when they've left their spouse and decided to marry or be with the affair partner. The first is, and sometimes they have both, but if they don't have one, they definitely got the other. And this is usually what brings them into marriage counseling. But the first is, you left your family, you left your children to be with me.
All of your friends who divided up.
Yeah, your friends who divided up. You left.
Sometimes your job.
Your job. You left your family to be with me. It seems like your spouse is a nice person. It didn't seem like your marriage was that bad. How do I know you're not going to do the same to me? You grew up with them. You created this life with them. They have this, this level of significance and an attachment meaning to you. How do I know that I don't have any of that with you? I've only known you for a brief period, and our relationship has had to be secret the whole time. Right. How do I know you're not going to do that to me? I'm not as important to you, in attachment significance as they are. Granted, you feel like I'm your soulmate, but how do I know the tables aren't going to turn on me once you stop feeling that way?
Or if I'm honest with you.
Yeah. And Morgan, the other thing is this really creates a lot of distrust too. Not very many people make a clean break to leave their spouse and then go be with the affair partner. It's not like, okay, you discovered the affair, now I'm leaving this weekend to go be with them. It's pretty messy. Right. And so a lot of people go be with the affair partner, then come back home. They live this double life. Maybe the spouse doesn't know what's going on. The spouse rarely knows the full details. The affair partner often doesn't really know the full details. If they both talk, they're both going to end up feeling betrayed, because they're going to realize, hey, this person is lying to both of us. They're betraying both of us, quote unquote. So people don't really ever make just like a clean getaway, clean break and go be with the affair partner. And so what happens is that's going to make it more difficult to have a healthy, relationship. And then the other thing, Morgan, that makes these relationships hard, this is another issue that brings people in. Usually one of them has cheated on the other. That's why they're coming to see me again.
Okay, so the first one is, how do I know that you're not going to do what you did to your spouse to me? And then the other is they come in because of more betrayal, because they're kind of in a pattern and a habit of betraying, and so then they betray each other. Yeah,
one of them has ended up betraying. That's kind of the grim reality of this. Is there's kind of not just two, but maybe three reasons to have to, and you could add more, but maybe three basic that I see is you betrayed them.
Right.
You've now betrayed me with an affair. Right. And then it took you forever to leave them to be with me.
Right.
How do I know I'm really important to you?
Right.
And so you have to ask yourself, if you got to look at this realistically, because what people do is they look at the pleasure of this. I found my soulmate. I feel so good. And when I'm away from them, I feel so unhappy and I feel this despair and I feel depressed when I'm not with them, but when I'm with them, I feel great. People focus on that, but what they don't focus on is the faults of the affair partner. They're focused on the faults of their spouse to the hilt.
Of course.
They see that. They feel the resentment towards your spouse, but the affair partner represents greener pastures, a new opportunity. If you're going to be fair to yourself, and something you need to do for yourself as you're listening to this is you need to really look at this as objective as you really can. Because usually what people do is they focus on the pleasure of being with that person, but they don't focus on the pain that's really going to be there.
Right. So then that's kind of the next question is, the pain of staying and the pleasure of leaving, but they aren't realistic about the pain they'll experience in the new relationship. So what sort of pain would they experience if they leave for the affair partner?
That's a good question, Morgan. There's a lot of pain there. And the pain of leaving to be with the affair partner is rarely are they ever truly happy.
Right. There's always a level of mistrust.
Yeah, granted, there's always, some Hollywood couple that you could point to. Some exception. There's going to be some exception to everything. There's going to be somebody that lives to be 140 years old when everybody else is dying at 70.
Right.
There's going to be some exception somewhere. But are you that exception?
Right, and it's very rare.
It's very unlikely that you're going to be that exception, because what the research shows is that 80% of people who divorce during an affair, because of an affair, end up regretting it.
Right, and I think part of the reason for that is because they just don't know that person. They don't know their faults. They don't know, what they look like in the morning for real. They don't know how they respond or react in different situations and scenarios because they've only seen one side of them.
Yeah. Well, and Morgan, here's something else. Is there's a lot of people who, some of you who've been betrayed, you may find this surprising, but there's a lot of people who have an affair and they actually fight a lot with the affair partner. It's not uncommon for people to really fight a lot with the affair partner.
So it's pretty normal.
It's actually normal for them to do that. And that creates the mistrust. That creates, reasons not to be with them, But people don't really always think about that pain. I've had people who planned to leave, who left, and they're like, yeah, we fight all the time.
Right.
They're like, I'm not in limerence because we fight all the time.
Right.
But they still feel like this is my soulmate. They really minimize the flaws, the negative characteristics that are there. They're not really looking at it objectively. And so that's something you have to ask yourself is like, what kind of foundation are we creating here for ourselves? If this were a business deal, and you were moving forward in business, and this is how it started, would you even like this person down the road?
Right.
You just add in the other normal family stuff. You look, and you have to ask yourself, like, are my kids going to like this person? Because kids typically feel betrayed too.
Right.
Whenever, a parent leaves. So a kid will say, like, why are you leaving me and, mom, or leaving me and dad and my brothers and sisters to go be with them and raise their kids?
Right.
Why are you going to go sleep at their house and take care of them, and you're going to leave me here? Kids feel betrayed, and it's very hard to get over stuff like that.
Right.
And so
it's hard to build a healthy, happy relationship in marriage and family
in general,
based on that.
Yeah, in general, but when you don't have a good foundation, it's a lot harder.
Right.
And part of this foundation is people who start out as an affair, and then when they do marry, their marriages, they're twice as likely to divorce. And so it's really something to be mindful of and aware of.
And it's because of that negative cycle. It's because, how can you have bonding events? How can you have kind of deep understanding of the person and open yourself up to that person if you just can't know for sure that they're going to stay with you? And there, I can't imagine there's any amount of, oh, don't worry, I'll stay with you. Don't worry, I love you. Don't worry that, you can't really speak to that if the actions haven't followed, if the track record hasn't been solid, to say the least.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Morgan.
So let's talk about what are some things they need to look at realistically if they're considering leaving. What should they focus on? What are some things that they can
that's a good question.
Ask themselves maybe?
Well, I think you have to, like I said earlier, usually people are focused on the pain of staying with their spouse, and they're focused on the pleasure of being with the affair partner. You need to switch that if you're going to give yourself a fair chance. You need to think about the pleasure of staying with your spouse and the pain of being with the affair partner. One of the things that you also need to ask yourself is, right now we're in the beginning of this relationship. We're maybe a year in, we're 2 years in, we're 6 months in, we're a month in. You need to ask yourself, and we're fighting right now. We're not getting along right now. We're already talking about, can we trust each other? This is the honeymoon of your relationship. So you need to really be fair to yourself and ask this kind of question. You need to think long-term perspective on this. And you need to also kind of ask yourself, where am I really watering the grass right now? Because the grass is greener where you water it. So where am I watering the grass right now? Am I watering it with the affair partner and ignoring my spouse? Am I not giving us a fair chance? Am I in limerence? Because limerence ends whenever you actually are with that other person. Adversity is what creates limerence. And so if you don't remember what limerence is a feeling of lovesickness, romantic love, obsessive love, where you really are just infatuated and head over heels with this other person because you feel wanted by them or you find them attractive. And what people do is they feel like this is their soulmate. They're willing to give up anything for it. And so you have to really be fair to yourself. And you're fair to yourself by asking these hard questions.
What will my relationship look like with this person a year from now?
And our kids, if they have kids, what's it going to be like with my kids? Are my kids going to hate my guts? Are they going to resent me? Mm-hmm. Because, and I'm in a unique position with this because of what I do. Children also feel betrayed.
Right.
They often don't know about what happened because people typically are pretty good at keeping things away from the kids. But if they see mom and dad are divorcing, and kids are smart, they're going to figure out 2 + 2 = 4. Somebody else was involved in this. Mm-hmm. They overhear things. Kids are bright. Even young kids are going to figure stuff out. And then, a year later, you're getting married to someone else. They're going to start feeling betrayed as well.
Right.
And it's going to fracture your relationship with them.
Right. And then, they're going to hate, or they'll potentially hate the affair partner who will then be, have a terrible relationship with your kids. And then they're going to make it hard for you probably to even see your kids because they have such a terrible relationship with your kids. Your kids make their life miserable. Mm-hmm. And then, what's going to happen? It's either going to put a rift between you and your kids, or it's going to put a rift between you and your new partner. Mm-hmm. So, consider that. You may not see your kids ever again. They may not want to come around you because of your affair partner.
Yeah, and you may put every one of them in weekly counseling.
Right.
So you really have to think about this. So you have to be fair to yourself, ask these hard questions. One of the questions you have to ask yourself is, okay, we've been at this for a while. Mm-hmm. We've been talking about leaving our spouses and being with each other. And it's been 6 months, and they haven't left yet. It's been a year, they haven't left. It's been 3 years, they haven't left. It's been 3.5 years, 4 years, they haven't left.
Do they really love me?
Are they really going to leave to be with me? Am I really going to leave to be with them?
Right. And if I did, what's that going to look like?
Yeah. And that goes back to, at the end of the day, the spouse is always more important than the affair partner. Now, people may not feel that way when they're in limerence with somebody. They may not feel like, my spouse is more important. But at the end of the day, that's the case.
Wouldn't you want the person that you're with, wouldn't you want their full heart? Wouldn't you want all of them and not just a part of them? Mm-hmm. When you love someone and you care for them, wouldn't you want their full attention? Wouldn't you want all of their love? Realistically, their romantic love. But you're not getting that, and you won't ever get that, which is hard for people to grasp. I think sometimes they think, oh, surely, once they break it off, I'll get their full attention, their full love. But will you? Will you get it? I don't know. Because it's like you're saying, they haven't broke off their marriage yet. Why not? Because it's hard, sure, but they love their spouse. There's history there.
Yeah.
There was a commitment there that was pure and not defiled, from the beginning. Mm-hmm. So you deserve it. You deserve a relationship where They chose you. They made a definitive choice to be with you from the start, and they sought you out, and you did it legitimately because you owe yourself that. You don't want to be the other person because it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like you're, winning at life. It just feels terrible to be the other person. So I don't know. It's just my thought.
Yeah, those are good thoughts, Morgan. And so part of this is all of our decisions throughout life are really based on one thing. We're always moving away from pain and towards pleasure. And so if we want to change our behavior, change our experience, we have to think more about the pain that we experience with certain behaviors and the pleasure of not doing certain things. That's basically how we get out of this. And hopefully this has been worth your guys' time. This came up, and usually all of my podcasts are kind of things I'm dealing with throughout the week or the last few weeks. So I just wanted to kind of talk about this.
So just to kind of clarify a little piece of what you said too, we want to switch our thinking now. So all along we've been thinking, oh, the pain of being with our spouse. Oh, the pleasure of being with this person who makes me feel good, maybe lifts my depression. But you need to make a conscious effort to switch that pain-pleasure dichotomy, I guess.
Yeah.
So start associating the pain with the reality of leaving for that person. Will it hurt? Yes, it will hurt. And start really marinating on the pain of leaving for the affair partner, and start considering the pleasure of healing this relationship with your spouse. So that is important to say.
Yeah, Morgan, that's great. I just want to say one last thing.
Okay.
This is something that's another piece of research I came across since we recorded the limerence episode. And this is really important because when people experience limerence, they mistake that as this is a sign of who my soulmate's supposed to be.
Gotcha.
This is who God or the universe is telling me I need to be with. This is my soulmate. But what the research shows us is that when somebody begins a relationship with limerence, that infatuation, that love sickness, that love addiction, that state where you see them as perfect and you just feel like when you're with them, you feel great. And when you're away, you feel sad and despair.
Yeah.
Those relationships don't always end up in happy relationships. But when people marry somebody, that starts as a companionship type relationship.
Gotcha.
And so what happens is you marry somebody as a companion and you feel that companionship love. But then when you sometimes have an affair, what happens is you feel limerence.
For that other
person. You feel stronger romantic feelings.
Right.
Then you begin to question your marriage.
Gotcha.
And so that's an additional piece of that limerence that I wanted to mention before we go today.
Yeah, so that's really, really important. You just dropped a bomb in the middle of this.
And it's time to end. We got to get going.
Dang it. So maybe we'll unpack that a little bit more later. But thank you guys for listening. Thank you for being with us today. It's always a pleasure. Thank you for making us the #1 podcast for affair recovery in iTunes. We will talk to you next time.
Thank you guys. Bye-bye.
Well, have you booked your retreat yet? Make sure to go to healingbrokentrust.com for more information and call 918-281-6060 to book your retreat today. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Healing Broken Trust podcast. As always, this information is for education and entertainment purposes only.